Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey y'all, this is John Duffin from Duffin Media, and welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the place to help you find your best, most true, most authentic voice. Yeah, your best business voice, but your most true voice. That's what really matters to me. That's what we're hoping to accomplish here. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, increase sales, meet the person of your dreams, make $1 billion. I don't know that I get those last two for you right away, but we're working on that. But the rest of it we will. And one of the ways that we get to do this is I get to continue to get the privilege of doing this podcast. You'll keep hearing us on iHeartMedia, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and a bunch of other places. Keep listening, keep liking, keep sharing, and we will keep cranking out the content. And the real way that we get to move forward a little bit faster to help you find your best true you, to increase the speed of you getting there, is to have killer people that have great things to say. I get a real privilege of having a conversation with somebody that I know, and we've known each other for several years. Andrew Mann, published author.
Hi, John. Great to have.
Hey, man.
Great to be here, buddy. Thank you.
It is absolutely a privilege and a pleasure. I'm going off of a relatively older bio. Are you still in Jersey?
I am. Yes, I am. I'm still about 15 minutes outside of New York City. I'm in Bergen County, New Jersey. So
I love that you remain there.
Bergen.
You're there with he lives with his wife, his pets.
Yes.
Writes, reads.
Turning
I
into
told
a zoo
you.
around here, but yes. Can't say no to stray animals lately. So
Is that what's going on? All right. So what is part of your pet menagerie right now?
we actually have 2 dogs, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and they're both rescues. We
Mm-hmm.
love them to death. A pug and a lab mix, and we, believe it or not, have 5 cats. So we actually
So since the bio, you've added 2 more to the clan.
We've added 2 more. We've had a kitten was out in front, and it was just somebody deserted it, and it was crying. It was a baby, and we took him in. And then we had a very similar situation of another kitten that somebody, I guess, either deserted or it just came around, and we couldn't say no. We actually brought it to the local shelter because it had fleas and it needed to be neutered. And they called us up and said, would you guys like to adopt it? We couldn't say no. So we went from 2 to 3 to 5 very quickly. But I think 5.
Andrew, do you think the cats are aware of that now? On the block, do you think they it's like, oh, knock on their door?
Yeah, that's yes. They know we can't say no.
Yeah, so. Apparently. So this is all right. Well, we'll keep this our little secret. Look, Andrew also guided me with a little bit in regards to integrative medicine. He's not a doctor, but that's actually how we met. Was through, we'll say, integrative medicine, legit, authentic. And if I hadn't pulled up a YouTube video, I wouldn't have gotten to know the man who wrote Such Unfortunates, who has spoken, written, blogged, shown up for, and helped a ton of people in regards to addiction, abuse, trauma, and best of all, recovery.
Yes.
So I remember, man. So I think I met you, in 2018, right?
Yes. It was
and
right
you were
around
telling
there,
me of this book. And so maybe you might want to read it, so I do.
Sure.
And so I read the book, and folks, I'm going to tell you that, honest to God, I remember on the first page of the book how gripping and raw and crazy you were in some sort of a shooting gallery in Camden, New Jersey, if I remember correctly. And I think, Andrew, what made me so impressed was how raw and real you were able to communicate. And I think one of the very first things I want to ask you, man, is were you always able to communicate?
Like that? No,
Okay.
I wasn't. No, not at all. I was a very, I'd say the opposite of that. I was very shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to tell people about what was going on with me. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept a lot inside. I really did my whole life. And I think that was part of my destruction, or part of the negative, the reason I used drugs and everything was because I kept so much inside
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't able to share it. So no, being an open book for me was
Mm-hmm.
definitely uncomfortable at first. It was freeing. They say you get this weight off your back, and there really
Mm-hmm.
is, but it was not an easy thing for me. Saying all those things was really hard because a lot of that stuff I swore I'd never tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I'm never going to tell anybody this stuff. It's my deepest, darkest secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody will ever find this out. I can't. I just couldn't tell anybody. And so when I did, it was very freeing in a way, but very unusual. So no.
I appreciate that. Do you mind if I ask it?
Sure.
Shame to tell them what?
The abuse special was really the worst of it.
Mm-hmm.
That was just so, especially as a male child, being
Mm-hmm.
abused, you're just like, there's something wrong with me. It's not the abuser, it's you. And then my situation was just so uncomfortable, and because it was such a close family member. And so it was like, I'll never tell anybody this. And I swore that. I said, I'll never tell anybody. So I kept all that inside. And, when I would try to have relationships with girls, and I would
Mm-hmm.
start having flashbacks, and I'd be like, nah, get away from me. That they never understood. And I would never tell them why. So they just thought I was this like bad person. And,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't, no one understood. And that was, and I just could never explain it to anybody. And so that was probably the most. And then even when I started using drugs on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't telling anybody I'm using drugs. Are you crazy? I'll never tell anybody I use that. No, me, no, never. Drugs, no.
Right.
And then when I wrote the book, I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell everyone everything. And at that point, it just made sense to, it didn't make sense to hide things. If I'm going to be honest about it, I just might as well let it all out. And if somebody doesn't like me for it, oh well, it is what it is. I needed to get it out. And that's, at that point, that was more important to me. And instead of pleasing every single person, I can't have somebody not like me because they're going to
Mm-hmm.
hear this. It is what it is, and it's part of my truth. And so I had to.
That people-pleasing part, I hate that we have that in common. I literally grimaced when you say that. I remember, like, the pain of being a people-pleaser. And, man, you just said something a little while, but I remember this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were going or taking yourself to a therapist, and you were, like, 13?
Yes.
Do I have that correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
I picture what I was at 13 and all this. You're acting very much then like an adult, so to speak, right?
Well,
if that's like you're taking adult actions.
Well, I had started having such terrible panic attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and it got so bad I wouldn't have even been able to leave my house. They were so bad, and they gave me Xanax, a strong dose of it, double an adult dose.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand what it was, but when I took it for like an hour after it, I felt good. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about, this is a very addictive drug that is not good for a kid's brain.
The doctor told you, so of course you do, because the doctor knows best. Dude, did I read correct or hear correctly? You were taking Klonopin too at 13?
Yep. That was really.
By the way, so was I, but not at 13.
Right. Klonopin's it's the same thing as Xanax. It's a benzodiazepine. Yep. It's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. No.
Thank you, and thanks for sharing. I was taking it as an adult, clonazepam. I was taking it as an adult for restless leg syndrome.
Sure.
So nobody has any idea what it is,
right.
So they were treating it like seizure or Parkinson's or something like that. Right. And I remember taking Klonopin, right? And so I'm taking it every night. You talked about in an interview, like you believe that this is the stuff that should be taken for 3 days max, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I was taking it I know for a few months, but I remember I'm like, this is gross. And I'm telling them that, you know what I mean? It's just gross, the feeling. And, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it.
Right.
I cut myself off. I just stopped it cold, which I know is exactly what you're not supposed to do.
No,
so I do,
dangerous.
right? They wanted to find something else stronger. And I only say that not to turn it into a me thing. I'm only saying it because it's that sense of, well, the doctor said, so, I guess I just do it. It's funny to me that, we're talking for you. We're talking now at 13, 30 years-ish.
You're right, right around, exactly, 30 years, yep.
Right around 30 years. And and it was maybe 35-ish years for me, but I was older going in, right? But sure. I just remember that was the day where, like, the doctor said this, and the cop said that, and the priest said this, and you just listened. Right. And this is where I think about, like, what you went through. You were having these severe panic attacks. You don't know what to do. They're shoving facefuls of medicine at you.
Right. That was.
And then you just take it.
Right.
When
that
did you know?
The solution the adults came up with were drugs.
Best you got with the information. Like, there's an old expression I used to remember talking about how people raised kids, and the expression was they did the best they could with the information they had.
Right.
Horrible to think, because, like I said, with all the research that was there, that's the best they could do.
That's the best they could do.
When did you realize? How young were you when you realized that in the midst of having to carry the abuse, the struggle, the panic attacks, the anxiety, and all that sort of thing, that, solid. Now I'm addicted to drugs.
It was, it wasn't until I had really gotten on opiates. I'd started opiates. And the thing with opiates, with Klonopin, if you stop them, you feel terrible. You get all shaky and everything. But opiates, it's a whole different world. It's, you get this sickness that is not like the flu. It's like the flu times 1,000, and everything in your body just becomes, and you get in this panic stage that you need something to make this go away. And I had never felt that bad in my life. And the first time I had driven up to a New Year's Eve party, and on the way up, I started going into withdrawal. And this was the first time I'd ever been on withdrawal. And it was so bad, I left the party in Long Island, and I drove all the way back down here. And I called my drug dealer, and I was like, I need some more of these pills. I think I'm really sick. I think I have this really bad cold. And I started describing it to him, and he was like, oh, you've got the perk flu. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I was like, no, this can't be it. I think I just have I must have some really horrible flu or something, some horrible disease from somewhere. So I went and I got more of the drugs, and I took them. And within 15 minutes, I went from feeling the worst I had ever felt to feeling on cloud 9. And I was like, and I knew I was in trouble then, because I was like, I know if I ever feel like that again, I'm not. If that's what happens when I stop using drugs, I'm not stopping using drugs. Nothing's going to make me, and that was the first time I knew I was in trouble, because I knew, and it didn't go away. This was getting worse. So it just started progressing and progressing. And it was just like the ultimate torture inside your body. And if I knew that if all I had to do was take a drug to make that go away, and that's when my brain started thinking about stealing things. If I was out of money, I would steal something. And I wasn't somebody who stole things. You could leave me around your money and I never take it. But in withdrawal, I would just do it in a second. It just wouldn't, that part of your brain, it was like you were drowning and you had to reach up to get out of that. So it's like going for air was getting the drug. That's how strong it felt.
I love the way that you describe it. You went into great lengths in your book to describe that feeling of opiate withdrawal.
Yes.
And you just did a beautiful job there. And I think it's so important to bring that to life, because I think it takes a lot of the judgy part out of the equation. It's like when you think about, for me, I guess also about 30-ish years ago when like there was a campaign, just say no. And it's like I was really, really lucky in one regard. Like, so my demon and my drug of choice is alcohol. And that was the one that the craving, it's different. I know that. And I'm not comparing out. It's like apples to oranges. But what I would say though is the hook, the addiction, the need for it, that was alcohol. For me, what I'm saying where I was really lucky was twofold. Number one, I never had that sense of euphoria from any of the drugs that I took. And I took my fair share. So that was number one. I just never got the feeling. And because I never got the feeling, as you just said, it was like, oh my God, now I know I'm in trouble.
Right.
You know? Right. I just felt like all the bad parts and all the weird parts.
That's good.
I never felt the euphoria. So that was just like dumb luck.
Yes.
And the other thing is, and this goes in part for my age, which is they just weren't as strong. They just weren't as lethal back then for me. So it's like it wasn't there. Whereas 20 years ago, 30 years ago, now it's like this stuff kills you. I was blown away. I think that's one of the parts where I meet or communicate with you, and most of our conversation is very lighthearted in that point in the very beginning. So that I'm reading this, being in the shooting gallery, the sense of like crawling around looking for a needle, the obscene pain of withdrawal, and this goes and goes and goes, and then you bring the crime element in too, and so it's like I'm blown away. I know I'm jumping ahead, I promise I'll come back, but I just think when I see somebody, it's funny to me, like in recovery, this happens a lot, and I'm still always amazed by it, which is, I've never seen you like that. I have no working knowledge of that. You look pretty much exactly the same as when I first met you, you know what I mean? Different color shirt, I think, you know what I mean? But otherwise, same face, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's the part where it's like, those descriptions where you went, the danger that you put yourself in and all that sort of thing. Were you able to communicate, articulate? I don't mean give a speech. Were you able to cry out? Were you able to talk to anybody? Or were people at this point just running from you?
A lot of people ran from me. They did. It was just, I was probably, there was a point, I'm probably 180 right now. I was 112 pounds. So I'm 70 pounds lighter than I am now. So you can imagine I was just skin and bones. And I looked.
Dude, you don't have 70 pounds to give.
Lose. No, I don't. I looked.
But yet you did.
One of our neighbors was like, oh my God, like you look like deadly ill. Like I looked like somebody from the Holocaust because I wasn't eating.
Right.
It was just, I'd spend money on drugs and that was the only thing that mattered. And so it just didn't look well, and I was dirty, and I was, like I said, it just was it wasn't easy to be around me, but there were people that didn't care about that and were like, you know what, they would talk to me and they would be like, wait, beyond how you look and how there's something here that, maybe it's worth, saving this guy. And that's, people like that are angels. Like, I really feel like, I've had some people in my life that are, they're angels, and, that didn't matter to them. And they looked beyond that stuff, and I'll always be grateful to them. I really have. I've had some great people in my life, and there are great people out there, and, that was one of the things. I just have had that. So, it wasn't that I was that overly terrible, but yes, people knew. I couldn't hide it at that point. At the beginning of my drug use, nobody knew what was going on. But towards the end, there was no hiding it. You knew what I was about. So it was, sleeping in abandoned buildings. It was as bad as anyone could imagine. I got there. That's why when I go to speak to people, I would go into rehabs and they would have speakers, and people would be like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know anything about the speakers that would come in, the people that I'd be with would be like, this guy I can't relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been through what I've been through. But when I tell my story,
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody else there that's like, hey, this guy hasn't been through any, like, they're all like, they listen to me because I've been where everyone else has been. Like, there's no one that's going to be like, oh, you didn't go through anything,
Mm-hmm.
No,
so he looks like maybe a bad drunk one night, and at happy hour.
Right.
But let me ask you: have you had people doubt your word because of the way you look now?
That I was ever that bad, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. They do. Like, if I would tell people, or they read the book and they look, they're just
Mm-hmm.
like, but I wish it wasn't, but it really was that bad. So, it just was. So, and, like, and I wish that, I wish that wasn't the case, but
Mm-hmm.
it really, people will look at me now and be like, there's no way,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody will, I'll meet that doesn't know my background. They'll just
Mm-hmm.
be like, oh, I can't believe how anyone could use drugs. Could you believe that? Like, they just don't see
Mm-hmm.
it because I don't look it. And so
Because you look like you have everything together, and you look, you know what I mean, the picture of health and everything's together and young, right? And like, what problems could you have?
right.
When is there a point? Do you think when you're speaking that is there a common point where if you're speaking and people are like, where that it's like, okay, they get this, and they get me? Is there a specific part of your story, do you feel like, or is it just your presence that in terms of the way that is like, no, he's authentic, I get it, I feel it,
Well,
where they're like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, no, he's definitely, he's got this.
right. Well, when I got up and to speak in front of a lot of people. The Humanity Preservation Society did a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I got up to speak in front of all these people, and it was nervous for me to do that, but it was a question and answer session.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, when I walked up, people looked at me like, "What's this guy? Did he,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, did he drink too much one night?" But then I started talking about my
Mm-hmm.
story, and a few people in the crowd had read my book,
Mm-hmm.
and people started asking me questions, and this one woman was like, you shouldn't be alive right now, and with everything you've been through. And I started talking, and the more people asking me questions, and then it sort of fascinated them, and then more people started asking. It was just, out of people that were up, it seemed like more people seemed to ask me questions. So I think getting that feedback, you could tell they were interested and they believed what I was saying, and it was, something resonated with them. They're like, wow, if he's been through this and he was able to get his life together, I want to know how he did it, and maybe I can, so that's how that went with that.
I love that. You just brought up earlier, you were talking about angels.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like a bad idea to introduce Karen to this story as well, too, as you're talking about
Absolutely.
angels. Talk to me about Karen. Talk to us about Karen, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. She was really my big angel. I had, in my life, I not had a lot of people that were good to me in a lot of ways, like that I could count on, and were just there. They were either for some reason or another. When I met Karen, she was different than most of the people I've ever known. And when I went into rehab and she found out I was using, in my life, I had people, everyone would turn their back on me. Like we talked before, they turned their back on me. Oh my God, how could you use drugs? You're the worst person in the world. Well, I'm from Morristown, and you can't use drugs in Morristown. Get out of here. We want nothing to do with you. If you get your life together, maybe we'll take you back, but that's it. And so I had expected everyone to walk out on me. I expected no one to, but she didn't. And she stuck by me. And she didn't just stick by me. She started writing me letters every day and saying, you can do this, and you can get over this, and you're loved, and you're worth it, and all this stuff. And, at that point I had given up. I didn't care about myself. I didn't think I could beat this thing. And she just kept writing a letter every single day. And then she bought me all this stuff to remind her of, that I could do this, and that I was loved, and that she cared for me. And she came and visited me, and I'm like, this person she's gaining nothing from this. Like, I have nothing to offer this person, and she still cares about me. And the only there was nothing. She wasn't gaining money. There was nothing. I wasn't around. It was just that she cared about me. And I never really had anyone like that, even in my family. And so it was like, oh my God, if someone loves you, maybe you can love yourself. And and I kept waiting for the day she was just going to be like, you know what, I don't want anything to do with you, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
That never came. And for me, I was so used to that, I just expected that. And the more she loved me and the more she did these things, I started to care for myself, and she never stopped. And it was just like, and through her, I found strength to start caring about myself and thinking I could actually do this. And so, yeah, she was absolutely an angel. And I still don't know why she saw whatever she did in me, but she did. And even with people told her to leave me alone and never talk to me. My own mother told her, begged her never to talk to me. And I mean, just
Your own mom.
I don't know. Yes.
Great.
So, yeah. And so that was, and she didn't. And so she's amazing. And that's, we're married to this day. So, that's another one that's unbelievable. So it's really, and we're still like best friends. So it's great. It really is.
So
amazing
you
story.
told me about, in terms of like Karen keep coming back and she keeps coming back, and did you want to push her aside?
In a way, yeah, I think so. I did, because maybe I was worried that she would hurt me, or also, and I at first I had so many people that were bad to me in my life that I just expected people to be bad, and I expected to find something terrible about her, or, just something was not right, and it just never came. And so I guess once I found that out, I'm like, maybe I don't want to hurt her. Maybe it's better if I push her away, but she wouldn't let me. And I thank God she didn't. And so that was, it really was, it was like God put an angel in my life. And so I have no other explanation for it. I don't know why, I found her. I just don't know how that happened. So it was amazing. And a lot of people that have read the book are like, wow, and and they say the same thing. So yes, I was very lucky for that. And I'm still.
Both of you.
Yes.
Both of you, because it was such, that's the part. Like I remember watching some, I'll just call it innocuous YouTube video with you and Karen. And again, it's another instance of an innocent, fun, easy, quick YouTube video. You're laughing about something, she's laughing about something else, and that's the end of the video. That's it. That's all that happens, right? And you just, it still blows me away, the power of like what I still call this gift, right? Where it's like you don't know any of the backstory, and you wouldn't suspect there was a backstory.
Right.
If you're watching that video, just two cool people giggling, laughing, and and playing with their cat.
Yeah.
I think it was basically what it was, right? That's the part where, so you're now getting some confidence as this is going. I don't mean now, but I mean back then. You're starting to get some confidence at this point. When did you? I don't know if it's no is the word I want, but when did you believe I can push past this? Meaning the addiction, meaning, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. Forge your own life. When did you realize, you know what? I can do this, or at least it's possible.
It wasn't probably until when I was in rehab. I mean, it was good that I stayed there, but and good that I did well when I was in there. But the real test is when you get out of there, and it wasn't until after I had got out of there, after I had money and had all the ability in the world. If I wanted to, I could go use drugs at any moment. Nobody would know, except I wouldn't stop using them. But I would be able to. And it wasn't until I got to that point where I really had enough extra money which probably took at least a year out of there, because, it had to be where I was settled, and I could have went and used and nobody would find out, and I still didn't. And for me, that's just I couldn't get 6 minutes, let alone 6 months, and to years. When I would hear people say they have years clean, I would be like, that'll never be me. It's just, I can't do it. I can't go and just not use drugs. I love them too much. It's too much relief for me. I hate being in my own skin. I just did. I hated being in my own skin so much. And drugs played a part in that, because when they're in your head so much, you don't ever think you'll ever be okay without them. So I was such a scary thought to be sober. And so when I would say after I had about a year out of the rehab, and I realized that, I can go use drugs whenever I want, and I'm not doing it. And that was probably a big turning point. Like, wow, I'm really not doing this, because that had never been before. There had been times where I had been clean, but it was all forced. I either never had money or no access to the drugs. So I'm like, yeah, I got 2 months clean, but I never.
And I'm also in an institution, or or whatever.
Right, or I'm in some state where I have no access to the drugs and no money. So yeah, I'm technically sober, but really, it's the real test came in when I could have went and used at any point. Like, I could have left work today and went and used all I want to, and I don't. And that's, for me, is really a miracle. Other people, why is that a miracle? I do it every day. But for someone like me, that's a miracle. It is.
When did you first start sharing of this?
Wow.
And what it feel like? Like outside of, say, a rehab or a recovery meeting, not counting that.
Right.
When did you feel confident enough to discuss you, to be you, so to speak?
It probably took 2 years then, because I always thought if I did, I was like, I'm going to discuss it with somebody, and then I'm going to fall back, and they're going to be like, oh, geez, and that's always been a fear of mine. I'm like, I'm going to write this book, and then I'm going to fall back. And that's why I didn't want to write the book at first. I'm like, I'm going to write it. People are going to be like, oh, that's great. And then I'm going to relapse right after I write it.
Right. And that's a good thing you said. Forgive me for jumping in now. I'm so sorry. But I meant to ask you this earlier. How long was the book in your head? You just started to answer. Was the book in your head before it went to print?
It's a good question. It started before I had written something when I was in rehab, and there was this girl, Lauren, who's one of my Facebook friends right now. She ran the rehab. And she read what I wrote, and she was like, oh my God. She was like, you need to write a book. She's like, you could help people. And I was like, yeah, write my book. She was like, no, you can do it. And I was like, nah, everyone says they can, but nobody ever does. I was like, I'll never follow through with it. But then that started getting in my mind. I'm like, you know what, a book, maybe. So, that started it. And then when I got out of the rehab, I had a close friend who died, and his mother, he was young, and his mother reached out to me, and she was like, I saw him right before he died, and it was tough, because I was actually my work was having me take a train to Philadelphia, actually, and so I saw him
hometown.
Yes, so I was coming up from New York City to Philadelphia, and I saw him in the train station, and he died a couple days after that of a fentanyl overdose, and he comes from a really nice family. I still talk to his sister all the time. She's, in her early 20s, and they were really close, his brother and his sister, and him and I were really close in rehab. And he was just a great guy. And it's just a sad thing. But his mom came to me, and she was like, I need to understand. You need to talk to me. And so I sat with her for like 3 hours on the phone discussing what addiction was. She just didn't understand so much about what Matt was going through. She had no idea, because he never opened up to her. So I opened up to her. And she was like, at the end of it, she was like, if I would have known this before, she's like, I probably could have saved Matthew, but it would have changed so much. She was like, you need to get what you just told me out to people. You will save lives. She's like, you need to. And I was like, no, I will. She's like, no, you need to. She's like, you need to do this. So I'm like, oh, geez. And she's like, you have to do this. Like, promise me you'll do this. So I was like, okay. And so then I just sat down, I started writing. I was like, okay, I got 1 page. And then I was like, you know what, if I was watching a movie and I wanted an interesting movie, what would keep my attention? And I knew if I started out, okay, this. So I kind of, instead of just tapping people on the shoulder, I kind of hit him over the head with a sledgehammer and let him,
Yep.
in the beginning, it was, this is what the reality is. And so I started out, and that's why I started out this, so I wanted people to know the truth, and then getting all that stuff out. And it was therapeutic just typing all that stuff out. It was.
So I love that process. And now you've got it out. It's therapeutic, as you're saying. And now you can, do you remember, so after that conversation with your friend's mom, and the only thing I didn't add to that, and I don't need to, was simply the fact of how brave that was of you, because that must have felt brutal to have to share that to somebody that's grieving. I don't know where you got the guts to do it, but wherever you got the guts to do it, thank God you did, for a million reasons,
Right.
So now it's like, okay, I got it out.
Right.
What was it like to speak for you at this point?
It was,
What's it feel like?
I'm an anxious person, so it's not easy. It isn't. But I think once I got up there and the conversation started flowing, and I started to enjoy it, believe it or not. And once I got up there and the questions and there's a lot I have to say, there's a lot of stuff I have inside that I know I can help people. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are suffering, and there's more we could do for them. And so I'm very, in my mind, I just, I know there's so much more we could be doing to help people. And I want to get my voice out there. I wish I had a bigger platform, because I would be there. It doesn't get a lot of news, but there's over 100,000 people. When I wrote the book, we had 58,000 people die of drug overdoses. A few years later, that's over 100,000.
A few years.
Exactly.
That's it. A few years.
Now, if you think about it, there were 58,000 the year I wrote the book, and now it's 111,000 last year, and we're getting worse this year.
And getting by the day. You compared it in the book to the number of wars. You were like, these 3 wars, that it's more. Well, now it is so overshot that mark.
It's like 2 Vietnams every year. Of every soldier that died in it every year. And you saw all the people against that war. Like, you'd think everyone would be like, we got to do something about this. And it's just, it's tough. So that's something I think has been my mission that I've been sent here to do, is help as many people as I could. So
it's almost selfish of me. One of the reasons I wanted you here and now is because I know of, I just being in recovery and being around people, and I know that this problem has just so escalated, and it's in directions I have no clue. I have no expertise in fentanyl, and I'm not saying that from a moral thing. It's just I don't. I couldn't speak freely. Nobody would take me seriously. I would be like somebody's parent. You know what I mean? And nobody pays attention. It sounds like, as I said, it's the selfish part. Bringing you on because I think the message really does need to be heard. It sucks to dump one more to do on you. It's not like you haven't accomplished enough. You know what I mean? Or try to help enough. But Andrew, the other thing is, I think right now, based upon current events, situations, just the roughness all around. And it doesn't mean everybody's living horrible lives. I don't mean it like that. But there's a lot going on. Regardless of your politics, regardless of your age, there's a lot going on. A lot of it ain't good. My thought is, it's really important to hear from someone who has made really good decisions.
Okay.
Because of what you've gone through. As you were going through it, you made really good decisions. I'm not just blowing smoke, but you did. And so my thought is, it's not just, like I said, to pat yourself on the back. It's more of a case where it's just a reminder of nothing to me. You know, I don't have to be sad and make a bad decision. You've made some great decisions, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I had to because of, I'd been through so many bad decisions for so
Mm-hmm.
long. So
Mm-hmm.
it had to get to a point where I had to start making good decisions and more good
Mm-hmm.
decisions, or my life wasn't going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the more good decisions I made, the better my life got. So it was direct correlation. I mean, it was that simple. It
Mm-hmm.
really was. So
What's your life feel like now?
it's good. I enjoy my life. I do. I have
Mm-hmm.
some great friends, some great close friends.
Mm-hmm.
The problems, today's problems are like that compared to the problems
Mm-hmm.
I had before.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, it's just when you've been through everything I've been through, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
is like turning the volume down on things that happen. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people around me are like, how can you be so cool about, and handle this like that? And it's just because of everything I've been through. So that is in a way a gift. And I'm very grateful for just waking up and not being sick, where other people can't understand that. So I wake up and yes, get to go to work today and all this. People are like, what? But when you've been
Mm-hmm.
homeless
Mm-hmm.
and if you didn't get a drug in your system, you were so violently ill, you wanted to hang yourself every day for
Mm-hmm.
years, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're free of that. It's just such a great feeling. And to not have to go to sleep with drugs or any of that is so great. I mean, I can sit and watch a movie and be happy, and that is just an amazing feeling to me. And to have my own place and my own bank account and car
Mm-hmm.
and job and all that stuff that I took for granted before in my life, every little thing of that means so much to me. And so I'm able to be thankful for things I never would have been thankful for. So it's almost like a gift I got from the horrible came this gift of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, where other people, it's just stuff they have in their lives and credit cards and stuff like that. Okay, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the big deal about that? But when you've had nothing and you get
Mm-hmm.
that, you're appreciative for everything you get. And I am. So
And it doesn't get old so far.
It doesn't get old. No, absolutely. Sometimes I get, it's almost like it gets better. So
I love it. Talk to like two more like
sure.
one thing I want to ask right off the bat. First off, who inspires you now?
Who inspires me?
You inspire a bunch of people. Who inspires you?
That's a good question. There's a lot I'll watch on internet. I see a lot of people that rescue animals that inspire me. I see a lot of people that help others. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of people that rescue animals. I love animals. I always have.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was a little kid. They were the one thing that didn't hurt me, and the one
Got
thing
it.
that was there for me. So I've always had a connection to animals. I can't stand animal abuse. I love people that go out and save animals. They inspire me. I've seen these people all over the world. They go out and they find these animals that are in such bad conditions. They basically are animals that look like I did when I was on the street.
Oh my God.
And these people bring them in and they rehab them and they show you them getting better. And then they turn into this loving dog, and they either adopt them out or they keep them. And that is just, I admire people like that. And I always write to them, you're a hero, and I'll say something on their thing because I feel they are, for doing that. And I love people that are really trying to help other people. When I see people doing that, and just out of the kindness of their own heart, they're not trying to get political points or anything. They're just doing it because they want to help other people, or money or whatever. When you're just doing it to do it, I admire people like that. So those are the people I look up to. There's, like you said, there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain in our world, a lot of unhappiness right now. It just is. And so when I see that, when I see people doing that, I never see, like, you see the people going out to help animals or help each other. They're happy and they're celebrating this. But then you go and it's just, it's like two separate worlds, and you get back to our world and there's all this, and it's just, so that's where my other mission, my mission to help people is, I want to start a foundation like we were talking about. And I got to and
what's the foundation?
I want it to be sort of a cross between a rehab and an animal shelter. Okay. And the reason I believe that is I believe animals have a really healing way that can help people in addiction. Because I believe that the addiction really doesn't have a lot to do with drugs. I think it has to do with what is going on in the person before they did drugs. So what I want to focus on is, of course, getting the person off the drugs, but I want to focus on what is broken inside of them, because it wasn't until I focused on that I got better. And I believe working with animals, addiction teaches you to be very self-centered, but working with an animal teaches you to be selfless. And they also provide unconditional love. And I've known so many people in addiction that I've met in rehab that just, they haven't had love their whole life. And either did I, really. I never had someone tell me I love you. And an animal loves you unconditionally. And when you start off with that, it's such a healing event. And when you help an animal, you know, in a shelter, it builds up your own self-esteem. So it's almost like a perfect thing for people in recovery. So I thought I'd integrate the two, and we could help animals. And it would also help get people to donations, because people love animals and they love seeing people getting better. And so I thought merging the two into one thing would be a great idea. And that's kind of my idea for it. And I've actually got a lot of people that, like the little girl Lauren I was telling you about that ran the rehab, she's like, I'll volunteer there. I've had nurses that I know, even a doctor that was willing to volunteer their time. So as long as I'm working on, you know, I've written to some CEOs. I actually heard back from a few of them. Even the CEO of T-Mobile got back to me. He's like, I love your idea. He's like, you know, let me know when you get it up and running. Let me know the deal, and we'll see if we can get you into our yearly donation. So if I can keep doing that and get enough people just to get it started, I'm sure, you know, we could really make some progress. So we've got, I got with 501c3, because a lot of the corporations, they'll give, but they want to get the tax benefit. I understand. So the 501c3 and I have merged, and that was, you know, with recommendations. Actually, a CEO of PNC Bank in Pennsylvania was the one who gave, he's like, I recommend, you know, you get with one of them, and that'll make it a lot easier for us to want to give you money. So I did that. So we're moving along. You know, I've still got my own life to deal with and jobs and stuff, but I'd love to, my goal, what would make me happy is if I was helping people and animals. I love it. I love, like when I watch that, there's a channel called The Dodo on YouTube.
I know what you mean. It's on social media. And I scroll, and every once in a while, and it's typically some foaming at the mouth dog, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, running all around the yard.
And
Andrew was also right. I was thinking of the fact that people have fully now understood and don't question the idea of support animals. Like when someone said, even a few years ago, it's a support animal, often that would come with eye rolls or, you know, nobody, not only does nobody question it, legally in terms of housing and stuff, you can't. It is like absolutely all good.
That's
so
good.
At the very least, what I would think is the timing here is good, because it's so hard to refute what you're saying. It's like you can't, you know?
What are you gonna,
who's disagreeing? So now it's just a matter of putting it together. It's like, well, you want, you know, animals taken care of. Do you want people off the street? Well, here you go. So that's beautiful.
So I'm hoping to get in front of some politicians and some government people, because I don't think they would be saying no to it too. Could you imagine them? No, this is ridiculous. And then running for office. They hate people and animals.
Some of them, but they can't. They can't, and that's the good news. Which is these are great public questions. Like when people ask you questions, it's like you had to answer them. Well, it's like these are great public questions. This excites me actually, because it's like putting everything you have. I think one of the nicest things here is that you're taking so much of what you've learned and you give it back, and it multiplies. You know, I just think that's really great that it's not as linear. It's like, you know, I'll take X plus Y and then we're going to make it 1,000,000. So I love it.
Because one of the people, I mean, people, they think, oh, drug addicts, you know, but you're losing a lot of great people out there. I'm telling you. And one of the people, a friend of mine that's his whole goal since he was a little kid was curing cancer. You should have seen it in his house. He had things written everywhere. I mean, that's all he did was study, and he was going to medical school. And he got on opiates from a car accident, and he couldn't get into a rehab, and ended up using heroin, overdosed, and died.
And dead.
He's dead.
And dead. Somebody who wants to help save the world
Cure
from cancer.
And I'm telling you, if somebody could have done it, it would have been him. He'd been working on it since he was this big. I mean, had rooms packed with all this material. He's dead. You know, and
which is why you're needed.
Right.
You wonder sometimes, it's like, so why were you saved? And I think that's one of the biggest. You never know the exact answer, but I think it's because you help a hell of a lot of people. How do we find you? How do our listeners find you? What's the easiest way to get to you?
Great. First, the book. The book is called Such Unfortunates. Yep. And my name is Andrew, and the last name is Mann, M-A-N-N. You can find me on Amazon is where you can find the book. It's also on barnesandnoble.com, but Amazon is probably the best way to get the book. It's also on Audible if you like to listen to it. It is available on ebook, which you can get it on your phone, your computer, any device. It's a paperback, and there's actually a hardcover now.
And there's a hardback too?
Yep, just recently. So there's a hardcover now. Some people wanted it, so I figured out a way to do that. So it's available in hardcover now too.
Oh, shoot. I have the paperback. I didn't know it was in hardback. I have the paperback, and I have the audible book. Hello,
awesome.
John.
Thanks. You're the best, buddy.
But you're the best, because it's like, in terms of finding you, I read? Nope, I lied. 314 people have reviewed your book so far. 314 people have reviewed it. So think of how many people have read it and the impact that it has. So I'll have your social media links up.
Yes.
Because then it's easier for me just to drive them to, you know.
Right. If you want to contact me on Facebook, everyone that contacts me, I always get back to. You know, and even if somebody says you're an idiot, I don't care. I'll say, hi, thank you for your advice. I appreciate it.
Well, we're going to try to keep that crowd away from you. But
but
one of them won't be me, brother.
You know, people have been great. They really have. I've heard, met some amazing people. I had a girl tell me I helped save her life, which was incredible. She said she read my book and believed she could get over it. She was a young girl. She's like, I was going to commit suicide. Now I'm not. So that was awesome. That made writing the book worth it. So things like that are just been, it's been great. And they can write to me on Facebook. Just look up my name, send me a message. I will get back to anybody. I'll reach out to anybody if they have questions, try to help you in any way I can. So
that's beautiful. I will have these links up, including the Amazon Books link will be as you are listening. And now that you've just concluded listening to this podcast, you will see all of these links. Andrew Mann, I acknowledge you. I thank you, my friend. It is so good to see you again and to catch up.
So great to see you, John. Thanks for having me on, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the inspiration. I never got a chance to ask you about the dude that was driving, the gay dude from Villanova.
Paul.
Paul!
Yeah, Paul.
I never got to ask you about him.
Yeah. Are you still recording? Are you still on?
I'm going to end the recording, and then we will find... But before we go into a diatribe about personal stuff, I will say this. Tell me about Paul real fast, and then we will. And
Paul is still alive. I still contact him. He's a great guy.
Right.
But he is going through some health issues. So it's sad. He's homebound. Paul is an amazing man who just used to come visit me every day and bring me money and bring me food and bring me clothes. And he was one of the nicest people out there. He was an angel. He's one of the angels.
Another angel.
Visit me. You know, I love Paul to death. I do. He's an older man. He's just a great guy. He's a gay guy from Philadelphia, but he's just, you know, he's a wealthy guy. He really is. And, but he's had his tough things in life too, but he understood, and I always respected him for, he looked out for me a lot of times, and he's just a great man. He really is. So I still call him so all the time, but he's homebound and he's got somebody looking after him. So I wanted to take him out to dinner the other night. I was going to say, hey, I was calling him, and he's like, I can't even. So his health is really faded, but he's like, you know what, Andrew, I've had a good life. And if I go tomorrow, I lived a great life. So it's been a little sad, but
Yeah.
you know, he's a good man. He really is a great man. So
He was a cool part of the book, and shoot, it's just a great story to tell in terms of one more angel. Andrew, I completely acknowledge you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's please stay connected.
Yes,
Thanks for being a part of the show.
absolutely, John. Terrific. Glad to
All
be
right,
here.
brother.
Thanks, buddy.
My pleasure.
Great night.
And folks, you've heard another episode of Your Message Received. I am John Duffin from Duffin Media. Keep listening, keep liking, keep sharing, and we will be back with more. Have a great night, all. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.